All right, everybody, it's time once again to talk about Marathon, that game that exists. The Sony CFO recently did a series of discussions on all sorts of different topics as part of the Q&A session after their financial result reporting thing. And as part of that financial result reporting thing, they talked a lot about a bunch of their different projects and investments. They talked about live service pursuits, whether they're going to like refocus efforts and do things differently. They talked about all sorts of stuff. But one of the most interesting things was they talked about Marathon specifically. And for this, I feel we need our stuffy. Yeah, you're getting thigh angle today. You're welcome. The shorts right up. Happens to the best of us. They sent me this stuffy after we went to the studio and showcase. And honestly, it is pretty cute. I think it's the best thing to come out of Marathon so far. So he's going to join us for this discussion as we go through this. Sorry, this might be uncomfortable for you. But having said that, okay, you guys are saying thick, how dare you? Sony's CFO says Marathon is expected to release before March, and Bungie's independence is quote unquote getting lighter. That's probably the nicest way you could possibly say that. What they have officially said, what Bungie said, was after they delayed it from September, they said, we will be talking again in the fall. And in the fall, we will communicate what the release date is, final launch plans, all of that. It is technically possible that this could still launch in 2025. They could try to shove it out in December or in November. It's not outside the realm of possibility. This fall could mean September, October, or November, really. I think December, you're getting into what most people would consider the winter, even though the winter doesn't technically start until January, which is upsetting to me. But regardless, that I think is possible. I think most likely, though, they delay it and it becomes like a January launch. There's plenty of games that launch in January. There's games that launch in February. I think February is a safer time to launch your game, frankly. It's just, there's a little bit more going on. People are home from vacations. If they're going to do like a New Year's trip or something, they might not be home to play your new live service game. So I think February is safer, and that would still fit within this timeline. But the other key point is, of course, saying that independence is getting lighter, and that makes perfect sense given what's going on. Sony CFO Lin Tao responded by saying to the question specifically about Marathon and what they would do in the worst case scenario if it was to be canceled outright. They said, first, about Marathon, how we factored it in the forecast, we expect the launch to happen within the fiscal year, which again puts it before the end of March. But having said that, this is not a commitment. No official announcement has been given yet. Some people have interpreted this as meaning it's not a commitment to launching in this fiscal year. Other people interpreted that as it's not a commitment for the game launching, period. Which wouldn't, that's not good. How I would interpret it, I mean, I don't speak Japanese, so I don't know what the nuance of the original statement was like. But as of right now, like it's like I said back in whenever that would have been June, July, whenever that was. Yeah, June, it must have been June. I think that had they launched the game in September, which I believe was the original launch date, I don't see a world in which that game at that point would have been ready, and I think it would have flopped catastrophically. I was like, there is a 0% chance in my mind of the game being successful if they launch it at the original time. And this was before all of the like art theft stuff happened. It just wasn't ready. As a video game, it wasn't ready. There weren't enough modes, there weren't enough maps, there weren't enough, like all sorts of stuff was not ready. But I was like, there is a very slim chance of it recovering and finding an audience if they delay it a good while and get a lot of these things established before launch. It doesn't sound to me like there is enough time to do all of those things, because bear in mind, the game as of right now has 6 character classes or heroes, or they call them runners, but it has 6 runners. It will have 3 maps at launch. They're all quite small. Each one has like 4 to 6 teams on it. And they will have a 4th map that is an end game map that will come after launch. This is what they said when the game was supposed to come out in September. And releasing that fourth map, that would be something locked behind like endgame content. So you have to have a specific value of total like equipment equipped on your character in order to even get in there. So there's basically a buy-in, and there's really high value like armor and weapons and stuff and loot in there in that mode, but it's extremely difficult. It's very, very tough and high intensity. But that wasn't expected to come out until after the game had launched. And ranked mode, they were saying that's going to be really innovative. That's one of the things that's going to be most exciting about this, but it wasn't built yet. They had ideas for it, but they hadn't even built, even as far as I understood it, a prototype system for ranked. And the game was supposed to come out in a matter of like 6 months from when we were seeing it. It just was not ready. It just was not ready. So if they delayed it enough where they can have the full ranked mode, they can have all 4 maps, maybe another runner additionally, you know, if they do a couple open betas and stuff, that could help it potentially. But again, like it's just, there's not that much content compared to other games out there like Exoborn or Arc Raiders or, you know, Tarkov, which is kind of like the omnipresent extraction shooter that you have to be aware of. It's just, they're going up against a couple behemoths, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But she goes on. She says, we are now doing modifications in development, and based on the progress in the autumn timeframe, we believe we can communicate when we can launch Marathon, either from Bungie or PlayStation. I think what is meant by this is that not that it's going to launch from Bungie or PlayStation, meaning they don't know who officially is going to be like putting it out, like it's a Bungie game. I think what they mean is we can communicate, we being Bungie or PlayStation. I think there's a pretty sizable likelihood that they pull Bungie's rights to market their own games away from them and they start handling it in-house. So we will start to see, instead of Bungie handling their own like creator preview event and, you know, organizing that whole thing, PlayStation does it all. Because PlayStation's like, yeah, that didn't go well. That didn't end well, so we're going to handle it now. You sit down, we're going to market the game. With regards to Bungie themselves, Tao reiterated Sony's decision to take more control over the studio's management, with the eventual aim being to completely integrate it into PlayStation Studios. Quote, about the governance of Bungie. At the time of the acquisition, we were offering a very independent environment, so that was one way of thinking. However, thereafter, we have gone through structural reform, as we announced last year. So this independence is getting lighter. Again, that's a very nice way of saying that. And Bungie is shifting into a role which is becoming more part of PlayStation Studios, and integration is proceeding. In the long term, if you can see this as an ongoing process, the direction for Bungie is to become part of PlayStation Studios. Now they're saying the goal is not to leave them independent. The goal is for them to become a PlayStation Studio. They're probably going to try to get rid of the C-suite executives within Bungie. They will be fully integrated and lose that independence. What that practically means in terms of like day-to-day operations and everything, I think that it is largely going to be a good thing. There's been plenty of allegations of toxicity, there's even been allegations of things like harassment, of all sorts of stuff. So I think that this will probably be a good thing. And I don't think there will be any love lost when the executives get booted out. Especially because there's been all sorts of stories. Do you guys remember? I wonder if I can find it. I don't remember the guy's name. Do you remember the Bungie executive, Yahoo Finance? Yeah, here. Bungie CEO seemingly spent over $2.3 million on classic cars after the Sony acquisition. And this was revealed specifically after they had to lay off hundreds of staff. So he's been an executive at Bungie for over 2 decades, okay? Faced lots of public criticism over the last year for Bungie's struggles. Bear in mind, this article is from July of 2024. And the leadership decisions that led to 100 staff being laid off last October. A tweet from the CEO thanking those cut for their contribution to the company was accused of being tone deaf at the time. And now, as you can see, That statement comes just 2 months after Parsons was seemingly the winning $91,500 bid for a baby blue 1961 Chevrolet Corvette on the vintage car auction site Bring a Trailer. Bungie lays off 17% of its workforce. Unrelated, here is a list of the cars the CEO has purchased on BAT. And this was tweeted by Valorant Player Association Program Manager Tailored. And you can see that this guy, Parsons, these are all the cars that he has purchased. December 21st, 2023. He bought this one November 22nd, 2023. He bought this one October 8th of 2023. This one cost him $80,000. This one was cheap. This one he only spent $5,600. This one he spent $40,000. He bought the removable hardtop for this Corvette for $5,000. He bought a 1958 Volkswagen Beetle sunroof sedan for $47,000. He bought this old Ford Country Squire Woody wagon for $46,500. He bought this thing for $42,000. He bought this one in May of 2023 for $201,000. Like, it's a little ridiculous. It's a little insane, okay? Just when you think, like, you've seen it all, it's a little insane. Now, as I've said before, like when we talked about Neil Druckmann's watches, because he's like casually wearing $70,000 watches, I'm a firm believer. If you work your ass off, you start a company, you blow it up into something really successful, and you make millions and you want to spend it on watches or collector cars or whatever, that's your right. And you should be able to do that. It's your money. Go for it. But that does not mean that you are immune from us teasing you and noticing and also pointing out how tone deaf it is for you to be like, yeah, we're really sorry we had to let you guys go. And then you go and spend $2.3 million on collector cars. Like it writes itself. The story writes itself, you know? So I'm not saying he shouldn't be allowed to buy these cars. Go for it. Go for it. Just know that people are going to say you're out of touch and you're like, I don't even know what the term would be. Corporate troglodyte, for doing this while you're laying off hundreds of people. But this is ultimately, I think, the problem within Bungie is that the executives have largely checked out. They're buying their car collections. This is where the real passion lies. And they're spending their millions they got after the acquisition on this stuff. That's where the effort is going. And then you see after this was revealed, he stopped buying through this place right after the story broke. He was buying about every 6 months a new car. And now I wouldn't be surprised if he made a new account and he's buying through there. So I wouldn't be shocked. So anyway, he's got the right to do it, but we get to make fun of him for it. Certainly. So Sony went on though. Tao said she currently doesn't expect this to happen, saying, quote, "We are now fixing the problem, so we believe the launch will happen," specifically as to whether they're going to cancel Marathon. "If this launch is canceled, we'd need to do the revision of the valuation. However, as of now, this is not expected." It's a possibility, but as of right now, it's not expected. Marathon was originally, of course, planned to launch in September, but Bungie announced in June it had delayed the game, claiming it needs more time to refine and test it. I'm glad they were given the time. I really thought that Sony was going to force them to put it out. So they decided to delay it, and now it's sitting in limbo. We don't know when it's dropping. We don't know what it'll look like when it drops. We just don't know. But I think it's likely they try to shove it out in like February. But again, like, what are the odds that they can make enough changes by February to make it pop off? Because again, like, is it even a concept that people were in love with? They did have hundreds of thousands of people in their Discord wanting to play the playtest. That's true. Because they have a lot of Destiny players that want to play it. But extraction shooters are just different. And I think that's the thing that is just not appreciated truly. And maybe I'm just totally wrong here. And it's very possible because unlike other YouTubers, I often am wrong. But maybe I'm just totally off base here. But I do not see extraction shooters as having the same mass market appeal as like your typical MMO style game or as like a battle royale. And I've told you guys 1,000 times how when I was at Bungie, they were talking about how like all the big streamers they were talking to, and they were talking about how the devs and designers, they all thought that extraction shooters were the future. Extraction shooters were going to be the next big thing. And I just do not see that. I don't see it. All the people that I've played like battle royales with, they're not the types to play these super hardcore intense extraction shooters. It's just different. Battle royales, you pop in, you play a couple rounds, you move on. Same with like Marvel Rivals or Overwatch or one of those hero-based shooters. It's fine. Like you play a few rounds, and if you lose, you just go to bed and it's not that big of a deal. You can have a match in a game like Marathon or Tarkov or Exoborn or what is the other one that Post Malone was in? I can never remember the name. Hunt Showdown. Yeah, like Hunt Showdown. You can have a match in those games where you literally, like, your day is ruined because you had an awesome gun, you're feeling really good, you go into the match and somebody snipes you from across the map and you just had no idea what was going on. It wasn't even necessarily your fault. It was just somebody played really, really well and you lost all your stuff. And that stuff may have taken you days of playing to accumulate. And for some hardcore players, they get motivated by that. I want to rage quit and scream. You know, and that's the difference, I think, for the casual gamer that's like just after a long day, they just want to play something to relax and to escape to. I think extraction shooters do not achieve that. They achieve it for a certain subset of hardcore gamers that like the intense struggle that comes with extraction shooters. But I think for the casual gamer, which is who they're targeting, I don't think that audience exists. And maybe I am wrong, because a lot of people at that event thought it. A lot of the shooter players thought it, like streamers thought it. A lot of the devs thought it, that extractions were the next big wave in multiplayer gaming. I just don't see it. I don't see it. Maybe it is, but I just do not see it. Yeah. And I think if it were going to be, that we would have seen success, bigger success with some of these other more experimental ones that have launched, but we haven't really seen it yet. Bungie's whole pitch with Marathon was that they were going to be the first to do it on the console side in a really big, high budget way. But I just, for one, don't really see the interest being that high. And I also don't see the game being that definitive console version of an extraction shooter. I just don't think it's ready. I think if anything, games like Arc Raiders or Exoborn or something will be closer to that, or, you know, Hunt Showdown. So I just think as a concept, it never really clicked with me and never made a ton of sense. I had fun playing Marathon for the bit I did, but like I said back when the playtest was ending, after 10 to 15 hours of playing Marathon, because I played whatever it was, 7 hours or something at the preview event, I played that, and then I came home and they gave us access to the playtest, and I played the playtest, and after a total of about 15 hours of gameplay, I felt like I had seen pretty much everything and I was good. And I stopped playing the playtest, even though I had like an extra day or two to keep going, or, you know, I could have played even more. I was good. I didn't need to play more. I had seen everything they had to offer, and I had a few rounds that went bad and it pissed me off, and I was like, I'm good. I'm going to go play something that doesn't make me so angry. And maybe I'm just not the target audience, sure. But, you know, I'm certainly a player they had captured, but I fell off after 15 hours. And the thing with live service games, as we've said 1,000 times, live service games, if you buy it and play it for a weekend, that is still considered a failure. That's still bad. Because the whole point of these games is that they get you in and you stay for weeks, months, years. And so if you play it for 15 hours and then you move on, that for them doesn't work. That doesn't work. So we'll see. We'll see. But I mean, I think you compare, I see Melissa comparing Battlefield to it. You just look at the discourse around a Battlefield. That's the discourse you need around a new live service game for it to be successful. You're hard pressed to find anybody that's like positive about Marathon. It really is radioactive right now. And I think even just as a matter of pragmatism, even if Marathon as a video game isolated is really, really good, I think just as a matter of changing the narrative from a marketing perspective, I don't think it's doable. Like I genuinely do not know how you could turn around the narrative with Marathon at this point. And I feel bad for them. A lot of it is not even the devs' fault, like the people working on the in-game AI and stuff. It's literally not their fault. It's like some artist that worked there 5 years ago that stole a bunch of artwork that tainted the whole game, and the whole thing is like so toxic now. I don't think the blame lands on a very few shoulders, but the whole thing is just, it might be too far gone. But we'll see. I appreciate the Stuffy. I appreciate that he's cute. The silkworm Stuffy, he's cute. But I just don't know how you dig yourself out of this hole. I don't. He's a chill guy. Yeah, he's cool. But they're going to try. As part of these discussions, of course, Sony said that they admitted their live service games shift and push wasn't going smoothly, which fair, maybe an understatement. Yeah, in terms of the transformation, the move towards more live service offerings is, quote, not entirely going smoothly. But from a longer term perspective, if you look at the changes over 5 years, you see that there's definitely been change. Yeah, that's the problem. But this is the thing, like, you have to understand that Sony's, if you listen to all of the discourse from executives, it's not just the CFO. The senior vice president, Sadahiko Hayakawa, is now openly saying that they're transitioning their entire business model. So the PlayStation of the PS4 era is literally not a thing anymore, okay? What he said was, quote, in the gaming business, we are moving away from a hardware-centric business model more to a platform business that expands the community and increases engagement. The idea of that is, and corporate translation of that is that they want to take their currently captured audience and find more ways to monetize them, more ways to increase play hours. Because again, you might be wondering why all these companies care about like total hours played. When Microsoft talks about a game, they say, oh, Starfield had the most hours played of a first week launch title on Xbox ever. They care about that because the math very clearly shows the more hours you put into a platform, the more money you will spend on that platform. That's like the whole thing. It's just, that's how they do it. And so they're very transparent that they're making this shift across the board. They furthermore, let me open up these quotes. It's also important to remember that Sony is not just PlayStation. Sony has a massive camera business. Sony has a massive TV business. They actually, one of their biggest chunks of revenue in Japan comes from life insurance. They have a huge insurance business, which you might not have known, but yeah, it's funny that's how they're doing it, but yeah, they make a lot of money there. He says overall, Sony are making a shift to creation as a company, as the three segments of games, music, and pictures make up 60% of their total revenue. So, they want to stop relying so much on hardware, whether that's PlayStation 5 console sales, controller sales, stuff like that, or more broadly, television sales, camera sales, lenses sales, which, by the way, they make fantastic cameras. The camera you're watching this video on is a Sony. This is a Sony as well. The Sony Alpha FX3, FX30, whatever. They make fantastic cameras and stuff, but making hardware is expensive. It's intensive with R&D. If you can have your own like platform, like a Steam or a PlayStation store, they make way more money. Their margins are way higher. It's fantastic. Make way more money there. For example, shifting from output devices like TVs and to creation devices like digital cameras, also things like music streaming, music catalogs, Crunchyroll, teaming up with Bandai Namco to create new entertainment and IP. In the gaming business, the shift towards a platform business is increasing. He says they're transitioning to an entertainment creation to expand and to improve the stability of the company and the profitability. This is also just more generally, if you are reliant on hardware, you have one bad hardware launch, your company is screwed for years. We saw that with Nintendo and the Wii U. I mean, they were in a funk for years after that. And it was rough. It was rough. And it was partially because the hardware they were selling was the platform. And so when the hardware didn't sell, the platform collapsed. And, that's a whole other thing for a whole other day. For further context, the question that was asked from the media was that Sony are aggressively investing in IP content creation, such as investing in Bandai Namco. How do they evaluate those investment results so far? And is there a specific investment that caused them to revise their forecast upwards? The answer talked about the overall strategy for Sony shifting focus to creation, and with the games business shift more focus to the platform business. Note, this doesn't mean Sony will stop making console hardware anytime soon, but they are saying they will increase focus and investment on the platform business model going forward. This is the big thing with this. This is also funny. Sean Layden replied to it with a GIF. Samir asked what I thought of it. It is funny, Kratos doing the face palm. But I think this is probably why Sean is not there anymore. You know, Sean left after the PS4 era when they started pushing towards this universe, and it may have just been that he was one of the people that was not a fan of this direction, and so when they started going this direction, he left. Whether he was welcomed to retire or just chose to leave, he left. Sean is like the OG PlayStation dude. If you watched any PlayStation showcase in the PS4 era, he was the guy on stage revealing it and launching it. He was one of the big decision makers for what games got greenlit. He was one of the big dudes within PlayStation last gen, and he was booted out in favor of Herman Hulst and Jim Ryan for the PS5 era, and we all know how that has gone. So seeing that he is not a fan of this direction is not really surprising, I would say. It's not that shocking. But fundamentally, the business is changing. And I think we've seen that with the increase in the number of ports from PlayStation to PC. We've seen them really broaden their horizon with live service launches that are also cross-platform. And they're also going to keep swinging at the live service batting cage. I don't know if that analogy makes sense. But they're going to keep going for it because, again, if you have one massive success, if you have one Destiny level success, one Battlefield level success, Fortnite level success, if you have one thing that does that well, it pays for 15 failures on the level of like probably we just talked about Contraband earlier in the stream. That was going to be another live service co-op game. It pays for like 15 of those, because if you can make a game that generates $1 billion a year, yeah, you can afford to lose 500 million, 600 million trying to get there. You can just keep going there. Sunk cost fallacy. It's a little different. It's literally gambling, which is why it's kind of funny that, so many of these live service games are reliant on things like gacha or loot boxes and things in order to make money by basically pushing players into gambling to spend more money for card packs, for FC or whatever it may be. And now these companies are losing hundreds of millions of dollars gambling on which game is going to be a success, because they basically just throw crap at the wall and see what sticks. That's why it's so funny that like Helldivers 2 ended up being their biggest success so far. They barely marketed that game. I don't think Sony expected that to be a success. I don't think Arrowhead expected that to be anywhere near as successful as it was. It blew up. And I don't think they saw that coming at all. The one they thought was going to blow up was Concord. They really thought that one was going to do well. And we all know how that ended. So they do not have a great gauge of what's going to be successful and what's not. So they're just pumping out a ton of stuff, throwing it at the wall and seeing if it sticks. MLB as well. Yeah, MLB has done very, very well. That's a huge moneymaker for them as well. But this is the thing, like for Sony, yes, they're frustrated that games like Marathon are not going well. They're frustrated that games like Fair Games are not going well, or Concord and things like that. That's obviously, they'd prefer if those were all hits, but they kind of built into the budget that they were going to burn a lot of cash on a lot of things that probably wouldn't work, and they'll just keep doing it. It seems like the biggest lesson learned since the beginning of the generation, though, was that it is in fact disruptive to have your core teams working on these live service games while also trying to make single player games. I think they believed that they could have a Naughty Dog make a live service Naughty Dog at the same time as making The Last of Us 3 or Intergalactic or whatever. and it wouldn't be that disruptive. It's just like, oh, it's just another team. Just have 2 teams or whatever. And it turns out, no, it's way more complicated than that. It's not the same thing. And it took them like 4 or 5 years to figure that out. But now at least it seems like they are reworking things and trying to refocus. But again, they had Naughty Dog working on a live service thing. They had Blue Point working on a live service God of War game. They apparently had the Days Gone devs working on a live service game. They had everybody, all hands on deck, working on live service stuff. A lot of it has gone nowhere. And years of dev time have been wasted. Billions of dollars burned in the furnace of live service pursuit. But they're still going at it. They're still going at it. Because if they have just one success, that's massive. It pays for all of it. That's the perhaps biggest takeaway from all of this, is that Sony, they may admit that their live service shift isn't going super smoothly, but that does not mean they're stopping. They're still going. And who knows, maybe in a year we'll be playing the Horizon Online, Monster Hunter, MMO, whatever the crap it is, and we'll be like, wow, they knew all along. We should have never doubted it. Claymation, Sea of Thieves, Fortnite, Saints Row reboot, Aloy is awesome. Maybe we'll be saying that. I don't know. Maybe Marathon will blow up and be massive and do super, super well, and we'll all have plushies of silkworms. I don't know. I think the point, though, is that Sony doesn't know either. They're just throwing crap at the wall and hoping it works. And call me old-fashioned. I don't think that's a super reasonable or rational way to run a business. And you could say, well, I don't think they actually are just seeing what sticks. Their judgment has been so consistently terrible this generation with what they should put effort into and what they shouldn't, what they should pour money into and what they shouldn't. I think it is effectively a crapshoot. The things they think are going to be big hits end up flopping catastrophically. The things they don't put much effort into do pretty well. It's quite funny, but yeah, the Sony live service push, it's a story we've been covering for a generation, and we're going to keep talking about it because it ain't over yet. We just getting started. He took my thing.